This is my 2000 Lexus LX470, and today I'm going to be replacing the power steering hoses. Now, the hoses on my vehicle are not leaking badly, however, they have been seeping ever since I bought the car, and I feel that now is as good time as ever to replace them. Let's get into it. Alright, so to start off, I'm going to remove the engine cover and the air boxes and the necessary hosing and intake piping. One engine cover removed. And one intake tube. And these bolts have a little grommet and rubber bushing on it, so just be mindful of that. And there is our airbox housing. So now we can see our power steering reservoir and the seepage that has been leaked out by these lines. I'm going to go ahead and get the reservoir off from the bracket here and then disconnect the lines into a little pan to prevent a mess. Now we're all loose. So I've placed some rags down here and a bucket here, and I'm going to go ahead and continue removing the clamps here, and then I'll drain the fluid into the bucket right there. So I'm having some trouble getting this clamp off for the return line. I'm probably just going to cut it if I can't get it off. So I was able to get both of the clamps off for the hoses. It seems like for the return hose, someone put two clamps on there by accident, and I think I destroyed both of them while getting it off. I was a little confused. Now we can remove the hoses and drain it into our drain pan. There we go. Starting to come out now. So that's most of the fluid. I think we'll still have some in the remaining part of the lines. Let's get this hose off now. All right, and now both of our lines are off. Let's put this somewhere safe. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the accessory belt. Next, we can go ahead and get this Banjo bolt off for the power steering pump. It is 22 millimeters. Just like that. Next, we can move our attention to under the car. We're gonna get this bolt off that holds the bracket for the two power steering lines. It is 12 millimeters. And now our lines are free. Next, we can remove it from the steering rack. So here we are at the end of the lines where it goes into the steering rack, and I'm not actually sure how I'm gonna be able to get this out. These two lines go all the way up around the oil filter and on the back side of the steering rack. I'm not sure if I can get it from down here. Let me get back to you guys on that. So I thought about it a little bit and looked at the Toyota service manual, and I really don't want to remove the oil filter and oil filter housing. So what I'm going to do is use a wobble extension on my ratchet attached to a 17 millimeter and get the first Banjo bolt off. Then I can get the line off. Let's try it. On second thought, I'm just going to use the breaker bar. Alright, got it broken loose. Now let's see if I can use the ratchet. There we go. So I got this loose now. Let's buzz it out. And of course I forgot the pan. And there is our Banjo bolt that goes into the steering rack. So I spent the last hour trying to get this line off with an open-ended wrench, and it's led me nowhere. I did some research on the forums, and since I'm going to be replacing this line anyway, I'm just going to cut it off so then I can get my socket with a breaker bar on. I'll let that drain out for a second before I continue. Alright, now I got both of the lines free. So I was actually able to cut the rest of the line off. Like I said, I snipped it right here, and then I just metal fatigued this out of the way as it was rusty on this end here. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my breaker bar and try to get this loose, finally. Oh, yeah, there we go. Got it. All right, now let's see if I can use the ratchet to get it off. So here's the current setup of how I have to get it off. I have my 3/8 ratchet attached to an extension, attached to a swivel, attached to another extension, and then attached to another swivel. It's a big pain to get this out. Let me get this out and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Alrighty, so I got the entire line assembly out of the car. Now let's go ahead and compare it with the new one here. So this here is what fought me the hardest. This line bends around in an awkward position to where you can't really get a wrench on it, and is attached to this flare nut. This was pretty rusted in there, so I ended up cutting it here and then fatiguing it out of the way, and then putting my breaker bar and breaking it off. The new one I hope goes on a lot simpler, and the reason I'm replacing it here is they weren't really leaking, but it was seeping quite a bit. And don't forget, we still have the return hose here that attached to the pump to replace. Speaking of return lines, let's go ahead and get this return line off of the power steering pump. It's just held on with a constant tension clamp. Now we can just wiggle it off. Actually, take it back. I'm just gonna cut it. And it's coming off. Let me put my pan under. And just like that, we have our return line off. Alrighty, I've got the clamp transferred over. I'm just gonna spray some silicone spray on the inlet here so it slides on a bit easier. And I will position the clamp later after I have the reservoir in place. It just makes it a bit easier. Now we can go ahead and put our new power steering pressure and return lines on from the bottom side. Now we can thread it through the top. All right, now we have our lines up. We will tighten all the bolts once everything is in place. I'm actually gonna go ahead and connect the vacuum lines here for this sensor, I believe, just to make sure I don't lose track of which order they go in. So I marked red here on the old line when I took it off and made sure to mark it correctly on this side as well. And I'll snap it into this bracket here. Just like that. Now I'm going to work on the bottom side here for the return line and the Banjo bolt. First, let's get this transmission cooler line in the harness. Somewhere about there. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the return line and Banjo bolt in. There is a specific torque spec for the return line. However, you need a crow's foot extension, which I don't have, and you need a different type of torque wrench, which I also don't have. So I'm just going to give it a good old Guten tight. Next, we can go ahead and attach the high pressure line. I'm going to be replacing the Banjo bolt as well as the crush washer. Alrighty, so now that I have everything all tightened up, I'm going to torque the Banjo bolt for the high pressure feed line to spec. Its torque spec is 42 Newton meters. Alrighty, now we can hit up top. So now that we are back on top of the car, we can go ahead and connect this high pressure line to the pump right here. The torque spec is 50 Newton meters, and I'm also going to be replacing the Banjo bolt as well as the crush washer. The size of the bolt is 22 millimeters. So I wasn't able to get this style of washer that Toyota uses to fit. I'm actually just going to use regular copper washers from a set that I have. Alrighty, now we can connect the return hoses and feed hoses to the reservoir. I spent a lot of time cleaning up the surface here as it was covered in gunk and dirt from the Weeping Power steering lines, as well as cleaning out the reservoir and the reservoir bracket with brake clean. Let's get this on. Now let's go ahead and get our hoses on. Once again, I'm going to spray them with some silicone spray so they glide on a bit easier. And I will reposition the clamp on the power steering pump for the return hose now that everything is all settled. Next, we can get our accessory belt on. I'll leave a picture of the belt diagram routing right on screen here. Now I'm not going to tension it just yet, as I may use my power ratchet to spin the power steering pump over to help bleed the system and get some fluid in the power steering reservoir. Next, we can top up the power steering reservoir. However, I spent so much time cleaning all the dirt and grime off of the car that the parts store closed and I forgot to get power steering fluid earlier, so we'll call it a night for today. Alrighty, it's the next morning. I ran out and got some power steering fluid. Well, actually Toyota uses ATF, so some ATF. Check your owner's manual on which ATF you need. My car said it was compatible with either Dex 2 or Dex 3, so that's the one I got. Let's go ahead and top this up here. Alright, that seems like a good place to stop for now. I'm going to turn the power steering pump pulley to kind of just suck down some of the fluid so I don't have to start up the car and run it dry. Alrighty, I spun the power steering pump over here with my power ratchet for a couple minutes and topped up the fluid. I think we're ready to go ahead and get the belt back on. Alrighty, now that the belt's on, we can go ahead and continue with the airbox reassembly. Next, we can go back with our air filter. I have a new one on order as this one's pretty dirty, but for now, I'll just use this one. Next, we can go back with our intake tube. Make sure to clip in all your vacuum lines. Lastly, we can put on our airbox cover. Don't forget to clip in your MAF. It will throw a check engine light. Ask me how I know. We can go around tightening all the clamps. And it's gone forever. Let's go ahead and tighten up the bolts that hold down the intake tube to the valve cover. Alright, and I think we're good to start it up. Let me just do one last check. Alright, we're now ready to start it up. Once I start it up, I'm going to turn the wheel lock to lock a couple times to make sure all the power steering fluid goes to the rack, and then I'll keep topping it up as needed. Alrighty, so I ran the car for about 5 minutes, turning the steering wheel a couple times and topping up the power steering fluid as needed. Now I'm just going to go over what I replaced here. That line down there where the fresh new Banjo bolt is, there's no leaks coming from there, so I think we're okay. And all the way on the bottom where I couldn't get the camera before, right there, that shiny new Banjo bolt and the line behind it right there. Sorry, there's not really a good angle. As of now, I don't see any leaks, but once I start driving the car, then I guess we'll know. I'm gonna wrap up this job here. I don't really see any leaks, but I guess time will tell. This job really isn't that hard. However, getting those lines off from the rack without taking off the oil filter housing and the oil filter is kind of an inconvenience. I just didn't really want to do it. Thank you so much for watching. If I screwed up anything or messed up anything on this vehicle, feel free to let me know. And if this helped you, please drop a comment. Thank you.